Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Overview and Scrutiny. I would like to welcome Councillor Ayodele in his new role. Welcome to Overview and Scrutiny. Apologies for absence. I have apologies from Councillor Denise Hyland, who is due to be presenting tonight, but we do have Damon, so we can ask him all our hard questions. Please be advised this meeting will be recorded and posted on the Council's YouTube channel. Can all those speaking ensure you switch on your microphone before addressing the meeting and remember to switch it off after you finish speaking. Item 2 was urgent business. There is no urgent business. Item 3, declarations of interest. Does any member have any personal or financial interest to declare on any items on the agenda? Nope. Minutes. Are members happy to agree the minutes of the last meeting? Great. And let's move straight on to the first substantive item, which is update from the Leader of the Council. We're going to be receiving a verbal update on the Council's progress and accomplishments under the Leader's direction over the previous 12 months and the vision and strategic focus for the coming year. Members should have received a briefing note, which has been circulated ahead of the meeting, and that is going to be appended to the minutes. So, Councillor Okereke, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and great to be back here at Overview and Scrutiny. Is it all right if I take the report as read? And happy to move to questions unless members want me to set out a pitch. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to take questions in order of the themes that were set out in the report. So under people, I had a question on the Wellbeing in Schools hubs, which I think is an excellent initiative. I was wondering how we are measuring the success of those hubs, and it's mentioned that we have the capacity to support 108 families. How many are currently being supported?
So, first of all, thank you for asking me about that. At the moment, the mental health hubs is using a practice framework. We are monitoring people's attendance, different markers on how we monitor mental health support with children and young people, working collectively with families. We assess the quality of the mental health hubs and the impact that it happens at the Children and Young People's board. I know it's also previously come to Councillor Fahi's Scrutiny panel as well. We're also taking feedback from teachers. In fact, one of the teachers who have recently spoken to about it came to the Children and Young People's Board and spoke about, prior to having a mental health hub in a school, they were blind to the challenges that were happening outside of the child's life. So while teachers are specialists and sometimes are able to pick up on things, not all are. We know that teachers focus on education and education children and all children in a school, but some children need specialist interventional support because of what's going on in their family backgrounds and what's happened in thetheir lives. And what the mental health hubs has brought in a team to help communicate with the families, communicate with schools, and support children and young people through their own experiences. We've had children's attendance highly increase as a result of the mental health hubs. You know, I think there was even one child who had a medical issue which the school just didn't understand, which was causing a lot of stress at home. Parents weren't engaged, but as a result of the mental health hub and the work that we've been doing through our practice framework, they've now managed to bring the parents on board. Mum is going to the gym more and getting out a bit more. The child is able to communicate and give signals to staff when they're in distress, and they're able to get out, and that is seeing that child go into school. So we are beginning to see that. In addition to that, I think what we are going to consider doing at some point is some sort of review of the service, which is probably either involving a university researcher to just track the work that is being done, and that we're going to broadly set that out at some point. But that's the aim in the future, so that we can demonstrate not just in Greenwich what that financial investment is doing, but also more broadly to the rest of local government, how that service can change the results and outcomes of children and young people.
Do other London boroughs have a similar service, and are we comparing best practice with them?
So not to my knowledge, not in terms of that. Obviously, other local authorities have a CAMS service, but where we are directly opening up mental health hubs in schools, I believe we should have been the first that is doing that at this current moment of time. Thank you.
Any more questions on people? No, sorry, then one more from me. On the digital health and care technology service, it's a similar question. How many residents have signed up and how are we measuring success?
I haven't got the numbers on how many measures signed up, but I think this also relates to some of the work that we are doing through Health and Adults. But I'm happy to circulate that. In terms of success, we're going to be analysing service. Obviously, it's still very new, and I know our council, Lodivar, has implemented it and circulated a briefing on it. More importantly, I think when a service is new, we've got to be looking at the statistics and the outcomes and seeing whether it's delivering and what we hope it to achieve. The whole point of it is about supporting people to be a lot more independent and living their lives. So I'm happy to circulate numbers to the committee more broadly and take that away as an action. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll note that down as an action. Any questions from the committee on place? Councillor Richards-Quattel.
Sorry, I was going to ask a people one. You mentioned talking to school leaders. When in your conversations with sort of head teachers of primary schools, secondary schools, are you receiving much feedback about the impact of COVID? Because obviously children who are very young, who were during the pandemic, are entering the school systems at the moment. And just whether they're likely to be getting feedback from those school leaders about any support, more support they need from the council, or any impact that's happening on council resources or services.
Thank you very much. So as you know, in 2022, we initiated a political review of schools. Myself and a cabinet member are on a schools tour. The aim was to complete our schools tour in 2022 in 1 month, and I tell you, it's absolutely impossible. And we haven't managed to complete it yet. So we're going to see all schools in the borough, visiting them. Now, from speaking to head teachers, school leaders, and teaching staff, the feedback we have received is that less children are coming to school prepared. From nursery age coming into primary school, less children are coming to school prepared, and the same with secondary school. And that, as a direct result, has increased since the pandemic. So we know there's some correlation of what the pandemic did to children and young people who were coming in from nursery, going into primary school, going into secondary school. The whole point of that tour was also to understand how we further work collectively, both the local authority working with all schools, the Greenwich family of schools, to make sure that children are well equipped for the futures that they want to have. So that has involved us setting up the new Greenwich Learning Partnership, which is all about bringing schools on board, thinking about education, curriculum, HR, legal, all sorts of things. As well as that, one of the outcomes that we found from talking to teachers and heads is the amount that we pay for SEND support. As a result of that review, we've increased the funding to be able to get more people who manage children with or work with children with special education needs. The other outcome of that was about the mental health support. So the mental health hubs you see today are a direct result of those conversations that we've had and thinking about what that offer could be. Some schools are in different financial positions, and what we found is that some schools are cutting back on mental health support because of the unfounded pay rises and all other associated things that comes with running a school. And therefore, what was being cut back was mental health support in different areas. And that's why the council stepped in and said, actually, maybe there is more we can be doing with mental health support. Thank you.
Councillor Fahy, moving on to place.
Thanks very much. And thank you, Leader, for the paper and notice of in advance. Congratulations to everybody on the issue regarding the accommodation and the way in which the numbers have been reduced in hotels. Is that figure likely to stabilise or increase in the coming months? That's my first question.
So the figure and number of people in temporary accommodation is always going to shift. Again, our target is 0. That is not a target that we'll ever be able to achieve. People come into temporary accommodation, people leave temporary accommodation. Our target is 0, but that number will always continuously fluctuate. The work we are doing at the moment to make sure that number doesn't fluctuate, and the work we're doing to make sure we get to 0 is obviously preventing homelessness, number 1. Supporting families when they're at risk of homelessness, making themselves identifiable to the council so that we can make sure we prevent homelessness. In addition to that, for those who are experiencing homelessness, it's making sure that we can get them quickly into accommodation. So those who may be entitled to council housing, those who we can work with to get into the private sector and get a home in the private rented sector, we work with them to try and get them in there using our hat track scheme. For those who are council officers, for those who are council who access to council housing or the right to council housing, we work with them either via direct offers in certain circumstances, or for those who may be already on top of the list, we work with them to make sure that they're not in temporary accommodation. So we're trying to accelerate as much as possible, because we know temporary accommodation is not just costly on the families and the outcomes of children in temporary accommodation, but also costly on the borough. Thank you.
And the second point relates to, obviously, the opening of Woolwich Waves is welcome news. My question relates to the development of the 450 new social rented housing. Are these going to be developed by Greenwich Builds or by a developer? And the added question to that is, mindful of the government's intention to build more homes, what plans, if any, are in place to accelerate our building programme? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fahy. And I think a really important question. One thing for the committee to note, on Wednesday, the 16th of July, the public consultation on the development will be coming out, and that's news that I got confirmed today. So please look out for that public exhibition where you can see the engagement that's going to be coming on the planning application that will be coming forward to get those new homes built. So first of all, the development, the council went into a development partnership with the Hill Group, which is a really good family business who develop homes. And that part of the agreement is obviously that they pay us for the land, which goes into the leisure centre, and as a result of that, they all also build houses. So they will be the ones responsible for building the 400 and something homes, but they are doing that in joint venture with the council. Just like we see, and you will be privy to this, Councillor Fahy, the relationship that we had sustained between Lovell and the council in Woolwich Dockyard, it's almost the same kind of relationship that we have between the Hill Group and us on the Woolwich site. And actually, if you saw to the recent cabinet decision, not at the last cabinet, but at the cabinet before, we have varied the decision to make sure that we can get that development scheme going. Obviously, we are now going to be buying more houses in the market. Most of the homes that are going to be in there are going to be affordable homes, which is going to be really good for the council, because actually not every tenant, or not every resident on our housing waiting list needs to be in a social home. Actually, a London affordable rent is very affordable for some of our residents in Greenwich. So in partnership with the Hill Group, they will bring that development forward. And Wednesday, the 16th of July, is a public exhibition to see the reworked scheme that will be going to planning in the future. Thank you.
Councillor Hartley.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the update. One of the issues on place that's not in your briefing is asset sales, which have obviously been very controversial, particularly relevant to the place theme when you think about the Equestrian Centre and Green Garth in particular, but also the sale of council-owned car parks. Ultimately, you know, you're the political leader of the council, it's a political decision, and you've had the loss of the Shooters Hill by-election, where asset sales were a major factor there. Are you reconsidering your administration's approach to those community asset sales?
Thank you very much. As Councillor Hartley knows, when we made the asset sale decision, it was to support the budget process. And obviously, this council is a council that has lost £150 million in funding. We are, every financial MTFS that we do, we see the difficulty that is posed financially. So we know we need to make sure we use our assets to support our financial base. And actually, that's what all councils are doing. So assets will always be considered in the process of our MTFS. Thank you.
So no change in approach on those specific assets, the Equestrian Centre and Green Garth?
So I think I'm clear. Assets will always be used to support our financial process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just a follow-up on the Equestrian Centre in particular. You've been clear publicly since the last full council meeting that there's been no correspondence and no approach from the Army about using the Equestrian Centre. but at least one of your colleagues in Labour group is talking to the press
I
about
think you need to be
this.
careful what you say. I've not had any colleague in Labour group say to me that we have asset sale, and I
This
believe the
is-
article in the Greenwich Wire said the Greenwich Labour source. So is Councillor Hartley going on the record to say a Labour councillor has said that, and he might want to introduce that to the meeting, Chair? Thank you.
One of your Greenwich Labour colleagues has talked to the press. This is publicly reported, Anthony.
I know, but what does that mean?
We've both read the same article. We've both read this. If I might ask my question.
Please do.
Thank you. We've both read the same article. One of your Greenwich Labour colleagues is saying that there has been an approach from the army. So you've been clear that you think there hasn't been. Could you, as leader of the council, reach out to the King's Troop and try and get to the bottom of this? Because if there is a solution that involves the King's Troop using the equestrian centre, it might be a way of preserving it for community use.
So first of all, I think we need to be careful when it comes to, we don't run the council based on gossip, and you should do better to not listen to gossip. A Greenwich Labour source could mean absolutely anything. In fact, it could even be the Tories, but who knows? That's just an example. What I will say...
I would just say, let's not focus on the source. The question was, will you speak to the King's Troop? Let's ignore the question of the source and the article because it's not been verified.
Thank you, Chair. And I think when we come to this chamber and we deal with public issues, we speak for a matter of fact, not unverified sources, and I'll encourage the opposition to work on that basis. What I will say, when it comes to the army, when it comes to their infrastructure, the army don't write to politicians requesting assets. The Defence Infrastructure Organisation manages the Army's assets, who write and coordinate the assets. So I will keep aware of anything or any engagement with the Defence Infrastructure Organisation. It would be wrong for me as a politician to go and liaise with an army official to suggest and start engaging in conversations about assets. Not how it works. Institutions work with the official institutions, and at the moment, recently I wrote to the Defence Infrastructure Organisation and the Minister to talk to them about the Army barracks and what would be happening, so that I will continue to have conversations through that lens rather than individual Army officers, because that's not their remit. Thank you.
Okay, different question.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll pick that up elsewhere, including the comments that was made by the Leader of the Council there. My next question is about Greenwich and Blackheath low traffic neighbourhoods. Obviously a major part relevant to the place theme, a major policy of your administration. And you know, there are a lot of concern, there's a lot of concern that you're well aware of, especially on boundary roads in Charlton and Blackheath. My question is on timing, because it was an 18-month trial. I've heard 18 months, I've heard 12 months. I've heard that a decision might even be made this autumn, and residents have heard different things from different places. So could you provide some clarity? When is the trial going to be, when is a decision going to be made on that experimental traffic order?
So we have up to 18 months to make the decision. It's still a trial. We've just had the consultation, so we're currently reviewing that and seeing where that takes us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cook, just for your information, we're running through the leader's briefing note that was circulated by section, and we're currently on place. But if you do have any questions on people, I'm happy to go back to it. Councillor Mbang?
Thanks, Chair. And thanks, Leader, for the update. Thank you for that. One of your priorities for People's Team is ensuring a good result from our CQC assessment of adult social care inspection. What I just wanted to know is if you can touch on the strategies or the things that are going to be put in place to achieve this. It's the first question. I've got a second one as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mbang. And as you will be aware, in preparation of our CQC, we invited the LGA to conduct almost a mock examination of our health and adult service. And that report is publicly available. If the committee needs it, we're happy to share it. But I also believe it recently went to health scrutiny, if I'm correct. So you may have that already. That mock examination was to prepare us. We want to make sure we're prepared for our CQC when it happens. We've had official notification that it might be happening soon. We're working with our officers to think about how it's going to be coordinated. When it happens, we're going to write our statement of all the activities that we do, and when they come in, we'll make ourselves readily available to be inspected by them. However, I am confident that we are working on top of it. Both myself and the Cabinet Member and the Director for Health and Adults meet regularly to discuss preparedness of CQC inspection. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mbang, do you have another question?
Yeah, the second question. The second question is on the economy. I think it's a great
Sorry,
idea.
Councillor Mbang, we're doing it by sections now, still on place. Can we come back to you when we get to economy?
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had one more question on place, and it's on trees. So I think it's brilliant that we have exceeded the target to plant 5,000 trees. But my concern is how we make sure that they actually survive. And so I was wondering what we're doing to ensure that, and if we can maybe look at putting some targets around how many trees that we're planting survive. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and I think you make a good point. We need to really focus on making sure the trees survive. I mean, just the other day, I think we planted some, but because of the heat that is currently happening across our area, it is really having an impact on some of the trees that we have planted. So we've got to pay close attention to it and really start to think about using our service to monitor how we deal with our trees and make sure that they are surviving. I will contact the Cabinet Member and also just raise that as a point, because it did come through on email the other day in an area we had just planted trees. We saw that. So officers are assessing it. They are on top of it. They are thinking about it at the moment. And if the panel would like me to circulate an action plan or what is being done, I'm happy to also circulate that as well. But don't think that we aren't thinking about it or that we just plant trees and leave them. We know the current circumstances and the weather is having a huge impact on them, so they are difficult to survive. One question that we need to think about is, obviously we've hit our target, that's great. We still want to go above that, but more importantly, being more strategic about when we plant and how we take care of this planting season. Thank you.
Great. If you could circulate that information, that would be brilliant. Councillor Cook.
It sort of follows on from that, actually, because obviously the front of the new Woolwich area, I think, looks fantastic, and I think it's such a great bit of work that's happened there. But already, I think, because of the weather, like you said, a lot of the greenery around the front and some of it's starting to look a bit crispy. So is there more what's the plan to make sure that all that investment that's gone into the new Woolwich Town Centre front it all survives and continues to look beautiful moving forward?
Thank you very much, Councillor Cook. So, I mean, great to see the work that is happening in Woolwich, first of all. And just one thing I'll say is, Woolwich is an area that has many opportunities and many challenges in itself. So I would just like to reassure you, we are thinking about those challenges and how they interact. One is through antisocial behaviour. So recently we're sending more people down there to do more patrols, encouraging people to not conduct street drinking because it's banned in that area, working closely with the police to highlight those things and making sure that we're moving people on. We saw the wonderful fountain and children playing in there. I think I walked past the other day and I saw what that brought to Woolwich, and it brought something different. We want to make sure that we encourage things like that. On the planting, now, when you currently have a contract like that, it still has a warranty period, so and that will still apply there. We are looking for we'll be putting in place a long-term solution that covers that area and continues to ensure the planting is well maintained and all the bins and places are cleaned properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to economy, and I'll go straight to Councillor Mbang for his question.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Chairman. Chairperson, I was going to speak about the implementation of the nighttime economy, which I think is a great idea for the residents and something great also for people who are not in employment. That's an opportunity for that. But having said that, how are we going to manage the aspect of people who have gotten even the right to keep their activities up to 2 a.m. and they happen to be within residential areas? We have currently a lot of issues in the dockyard area because of that. So how are we going to manage that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Mbang, just to that point on the Woolwich Dockyard, I think I'm aware of the issue. with the fact that one of the businesses in Dockyard, in close proximity to the residential area, is causing issues, but a very successful business at that and very popular business and continue to trade. In that situation, what our teams and the cabinet member, Councillor Taggart Ryan, has been doing, working with our licensing team, is facilitating meetings between the community and the business, and also coming together to agree actions to make sure that they can coexist peacefully. So that's the day-to-day management of how we deal with those issues. We obviously continue to have an aspiration for the nighttime economy, and actually the mayor continues to have an aspiration for nighttime economy. We received funding to help put in on activities. We want to be able to build on that. However, there is a challenge within that in terms of thinking about the aspects you present, about what a nighttime economy brings to the borough. And that brings that point about safety and community safety. So very soon we will be setting out a more a proactive strategy around the nighttime economy, thinking about how we work collectively with the police and get their buy-in to having a nighttime economy. Because obviously, if anything goes wrong in a nighttime economy, the people that have to respond to that is the Metropolitan Police. And they don't just have to respond to that in Greenwich, they have to respond to that in Bexley, and they also have to respond to that in Lewisham. So we'll be working collectively with the police to make sure we have a great nighttime economy that is safe for the community, it's well-resourced, and it interacts well with the public and our communities. As well as doing that, is thinking about licensing. At some point, we're going to be thinking about we're a very pro-business borough. What can we do to support businesses who want to grow in the borough and make sure that they can thrive under a licensing arrangement to have a nighttime economy? So those are some strands of work. All of that work will take us up to about 2026 for it to be completed. We've recently recruited new officers in that team who's recently just been welcomed to Greenwich, and collectively across the business department, the licensing department, they are collectively working together to formulate that strategy. They are going to be going out and speaking to the public, going out and speaking to businesses, and bringing and wrapping that all up into a strategy which is due around towards the end of 2026. Thank you.
Councillor Fahy.
Thank you, Chair. Clearly, the nighttime economy is critical to the borough. And I'm just wondering and thinking about the announcement by the Metropolitan Police about additional resources for Woolwich. And I think that may be a plus or a minus in terms of people may feel a bit disconcerted about coming to Woolwich because of the particular view that it might be unsafe, which in my view it's not most of the time. So I'm just wondering whether you have any views about that.
Thank you, Councillor Fahy. First of all, we welcome the Mayor's investment in Woolwich. I think it's a good thing for Woolwich. It's obviously going to make it feel safer. His summer initiative for the borough with the Metropolitan Police will help further resource it from a community aspect. In terms of that aspects of safety, look, incidents of crime happen everywhere. And actually, the way we stamp it out is strengthening our relationships with the police, strengthening our relationships with our communities, and make sure that people know who dabble incidents of criminality, that it won't be tolerated. But more importantly, we obviously have our own community safety enforcement teams who collectively work with our community and make sure they intervene in different areas of the borough. So you see that happen on our town centres, but you also see our safer estates teams that go onto our estates. Thank you.
Councillor Ayodele.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Leader, for the report. I'd love to dig a little bit into sort of the culture element of the economy. I note that obviously the culture strategy was launched last year, but quite keen, given we are in the summer months, to discuss quickly about how much more investment are we looking into to drive into the borough, given obviously the Greenwich and Docklands festivals coming up, and I know that obviously we do spend quite a bit on the sort of the culture aspect of our work. But from a creative point, is there any further investment that you're confident could be brought into the borough over the next 12 months and beyond?
So as you know, I have another role as a member of the Arts Council England Area Council for London. culture funding has suffered in London. A lot of funding has left London, sadly. And at the moment, the Arts England will be thinking about cultural funding in the next few months and obviously going out to tender. When it comes to Greenwich, though, you will be aware that we submitted a bid for the Mayor Borough of Culture. Sadly unsuccessful. I think we should have been successful, but I believe we got a cultural impact award. Now, specifically on that, I think circa £5,000 we spent on that bid. We got awarded 250 grand. So you can see the level of investment that we've put in to receive. That 250,000 is going to be supporting our cultural sector in Greenwich. And I think since the launch of our cultural strategy, what I would say is that we are thinking less about how we used to do things and thinking more about how we build on culture and move it forward. Greenwich has really great culture. And to maintain a great cultural sector, our thought processes are thinking more about the ecosystem of culture. And the way we make sure we grow the ecosystem of culture is by embedding the principles of collaboration. So how do we get different cultural organizations at a time where there is a lack of finance in the cultural sector? How do we get them working together? How do we make sure that we do commissioning from a perspective that encourages collaboration, because it's through collaboration rather than competition that creates a functioning and a well-placed cultural sector. So that's the current place that we're taking our cultural strategy. Just last week, both myself and Councillor Bauer launched our cultural board. Now that is, again, the council helping to facilitate a cultural board with representatives from different, from cultural organisations in the borough, all sitting on one board, thinking about how we deliver and achieve our cultural strategy. That is going to be chaired by a lady called Vicky. I think she lives in Charlton, but more importantly, she also sits on Arts Council England. She also runs the Albany and helps out in the Albany in Deptford, as well as another organisation. So she's volunteered to be able to help us with our cultural board. As well as that, that place is going to be used for the strategic objectives of achieving our cultural strategy. And more importantly, you know, my reflections from that just first meeting, which was held in Woolwich Works, there's so much that we need to do. But the priorities are thinking about data. Number one, thinking about strategic policy. And number two, thinking about the best way to commission cultural activities across the borough so it is felt in every single community, but also so it helps achieve our outcomes. Obviously, our Greenwich is a mission-led plan. How do we make sure our cultural objectives are meeting our health objectives set out in our health vision in our Greenwich? Thank you.
Councillor Hartley.
Thank you, Chair. Just thinking about the economy theme, on the Trafalgar Tavern, it seems to me just a real shame that the council hasn't been able to find a solution that balances the need to support what is, you know, a really iconic pub, which should be an iconic, thriving pub, with pedestrian access, which is also important. Can I just ask you what you did as leader of the council to engage with the Trafalgar Tavern on this? Have you been down and spoken to them?
Thank you very much. So I believe ward councillors are engaged. I haven't directly engaged with the Trafalgar Tavern, and I think you're right. Obviously, a really successful pub, but at the same time, huge challenges there. Obviously, you wouldn't be aware of the fact that certain parts of the Thames Path don't have planning permission for tables and chairs. And obviously, local communities have obviously raised the issue about accessibility and all of those other things. And you will also be aware, I believe, it's a planning matter. It's currently at appeal with the Planning Inspectorate. So I think it's best to see that process through, but always happy to engage with organisations or anything. However, I do think that process on the appeal stage needs to be dealt with first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to buy you a pint if you come down to the Trafalgar Tavern and meet Frank about it.
I've been many times.
Can't say I didn't try. My next question is on the culture strategy. Could you just give us an update on Woolwich Works? So when the council stepped in with support, you said you'd have your finger on the pulse of what happens next. So what's your view of the turnaround, its progress? And can I just ask, how are you keeping close to this as leader of the council?
Thank you. So obviously, within the decision report that was made, decisions made around Woolwich Works are in consultation with myself and a responsible cabinet member. I believe it's on the work programme, or on a previous work programme, but it might be coming to scrutiny, can't remember, or if it did or not. But that's the facility in which you guys get to see it. I also meet regularly with our cultural leaders in the borough. So, for example, our interim cultural director or interim cultural person, I meet regularly and talk about different cultural organisations. Woolwich Works is part of that monitoring that I do. I also have a really great relationship with the leader of Woolwich Works, Nick, and just speak to him about the challenges that he faces. He's done a lot of work turning that organisation around. If you think about the things that Woolwich Works is now doing, just like last week I was speaking to him and he talked about a corporate event that was coming to be run in the organisation. So a lot of people are now starting to find out about it. We had the Blue Earth Summit, which is now is going to be running again for the second time, which is all the discourse around sustainability and how we have a eco journey towards sustainability. The Blue Earth Summit brings all those wonderful voices to Woolwich. And it's just that his ability to go out and find business seems to be working really, really well. I believe there was also a Nike event that was held there. So I think he's doing well to turn it around. Lots of changes happening at Woolwich Works. You would have seen the space inside where it's been used to attract people to come and use the bar. It's now a co-working space whereby people are able to come and use the bar and work there, but also invest and buy things from the bar, buy coffees. That's how he's trying to get money in, but still lots of events. So I think they are managing to turn it around and working really well through it. Thank you.
Councillor Cook.
Yeah, just as wanted to respond. Yes, we did have a quite extensive scrutiny meeting in the panel where Woolwich Works came and did a presentation and spoke in detail about some of the challenges they have, but some of the turnaround they have done. And we also did a tour to Woolwich Works, which some of the councillors attended, and it was really great. And they did talk a lot about the commercial stream, which seems to have made a real difference in the turnaround. So that's a big area that I think they're continuing to explore. And so yeah, I know I'm not answering, but there you go.
Thanks. Any questions now on communities or organisation? Councillor Hartley.
Thank you. Just want to ask you about the Community Engagement Pledge. So I think you know, I think that document has caused quite a lot of consternation because if you think about lots of the issues that come up at full council, get raised with us as councillors, Middle Park leaseholders, Royal Artillery Quays, the LTN, the Equestrian Centre, there's lots of examples where communities don't feel they have been engaged well. So could I just ask you about learning, which is obviously really important. What are you doing to make sure the council learns from these examples where residents feel that they haven't been engaged well by the council?
Thank you. I mean, I think the Community Engagement Pledge really sets out our ladder of engagement really well about informing, about co-production, about consulting. And I think we really have to be careful to equate we want and just doing that. That's not going to be able to happen sometimes. I do think there is learning to be had. So, for instance, when we take the Greenwich neighbourhood scheme, I think the consultation has actually been very, very good. We've been going into communities, speaking with people, holding community meetings. It is a contentious issue. We've been writing to people, keeping them updated regularly. There's still more learning there, which is probably about the engagement platform that we use. That's probably a place that we want to develop so it's easier to be able to access. So I think if you recognize that we're still very new on our community engagement journey, there's more that we can be doing with it, and it's building up. If you compare ourselves with authorities who have a community engagement team, they've had one well established. So we are making sure it's really trying to embed it in the organisation, and I think that's the tension that we are in local government and politics at the moment. Is that it's challenging to respond to all the needs of our community. Every single councillor in this room would have had to write to one of their residents, sadly not being able to meet a request at some point. And that is a challenge that we have, because we have to balance the needs of all communities in Greenwich and respond to that. Thank you.
I've got one on organisation. Do you want me to wait? Or?
No, you can go ahead. We're doing organisation and communities together.
Thank you, thanks. My question on organisation is about innovation. So we had this really great example of temporary accommodation where there was a bit of digital innovation, massively reduced costs. And I wondered if I could just pick up a long-running thing that I've been sort of trying to hammer to various people, including the Cabinet Member for Finance, which is I think the Council needs to be a lot more commercially minded and enterprising. When our residents fund through their taxes innovation that works and that could be used by other local authorities, I'd really love to see the Council being a bit more enterprising, perhaps charging other authorities, especially in examples like that, which saves them money as well as us. I don't see why the Greenwich taxpayer shouldn't be have their investment recouped. So I just wondered what your thoughts were on that as a general principle. And there's some examples like CCTV, which is very commercially minded and enterprising, so I'll give the Council some credit for that. But you know, is there more you think we could do there as a Council?
And just on that point, I think we had a recommendation from Overview and Scrutiny on the temporary accommodation, the brilliant work that was done on temporary accommodation and the way we used AI in order to bring the cost down, to look at seeing how we could help other councils with that. I just thought I'd make that point before you made your answer.
Thank you. So, to the point of commercialisation, one thing I would say is obviously we are a local council, and obviously we respond to services. So our main duties isn't commercialisation, because we're not a business, and I know you fully get that and understand that. In terms of commercialisation, I think where it meets our values and where it's convenient to do so, where it works in our interests, then I think we should always be looking at that in the same example that you gave in CCTV. In terms of the example on temporary accommodation, in kind of doing that, we would introduce competition or not introduce more competition if everyone knew how to do it, quite frankly. And we are challenging on temporary accommodation numbers are challenging. So in resourcing up and showing everyone the kind of things in the way we deal with those processes, we have been going out and educating other councils on how they deal with it. But if we were to turn our tool and use it, the data points that we put into that tool might get blocked by the other providers and all other points. So the process of commercialization could actually work against us, and that's the challenge around it. So when we talk about how we're tackling temporary accommodation, we are doing it from a process of learning rather than commercialization, because we don't want that commercialization to knock us out of where we would be. To your point, Councillor Hartley, about other aspects of commercial, I think it's just, we just need to think about where, when, how, and how it works. And I think there are many examples where we do that. We do that a lot in planning. We do that with councils with the disabled blue badges. So I do think there are examples out there where we have done that, but when it's convenient for the council and where it doesn't take us away from our social purpose of delivering services for residents. Thank you.
Councillor Ayodele.
Thank you. My question in relation to organisation, actually, it's good that Damon's here, because obviously part of my work under the organisations communities brief will be to understand how certain directorates are improving. And I note the revised changes to the new finance directorate and then the legal directorate, so a resources directorate, I beg your pardon. So a slight change there. I wonder, Anthony, if you've got any immediate or early thoughts on how that's performance is going. I'd also like to flag, I've seen some great engagement from some of the leaders. I saw some of the leadership team videos that are being circulated around just to sort of engage the staff more. So, you know, a selfish question, but I wonder if there's any early thoughts on how the legal directorate is working and the resources directorate is working under its new makeup.
Thank you very much. So just an overarching view of how the changes are bringing in. Well, first of all, I think resources and finance have a real job to make sure they effectively changed their service, and I think they're beginning doing that. Damon can speak to his recruitment processes and making sure he's got a financial team that can deliver for the council, and same with Azuka on terms of legal services. You'll remember very well that we conducted an LGA peer review, which spoke about internal communications. So the videos that you see that Damon, no matter how robotic he is in those videos, the videos that you saw is actually about communicating with staff and bringing them on a journey of what the council is doing. Making sure our staff understand the finances, making sure our staff understand what's happening in the council. So all directors are doing those videos, and I'm grateful to our staff for doing that, because it's about bringing all of our staff and making sure we're all on the same page. Thank you.
Councillor Cook?
I actually realised I missed a question from an earlier section. Can I come back at the end? Sorry. Well, and it might have been spoken when I was coming, because so sorry if I missed the opportunity to raise this, but I try where I can to raise the issue of fly tipping, and that's the sort of place section. I was late to today's surgery because I was late to today's meeting because I had a surgery where fly tipping came up twice, and it is the thing that I hear more than anything else. I can see that it's a priority in the place section moving forward. So really, I just want to know, I know it's been looked at as well already, and it has been by the Cabinet member, but what's the plans for this priority, and how, are we going to be looking at it moving forward? It'd be great to hear about if there's any information.
No, I'm great you asked this question, Councillor Cook, because if there's one thing we're both known for, it's been tagged in fly videos on social media, from Plumstead all the way to Woolwich. But I'm sure other areas in the borough also tag me. Look, I think the Cabinet member has spoken quite clearly on the issue of fly tipping. She's going around conducting a review of fly tipping. She's picking up the hotspots to come back and release a strategy on how she deals with it. That's what's ongoing at the moment. That should be coming to us soon. And actually the intel that all councillors have been feeding her, I think is really helping show the picture, show the needs, show the issues. And actually that review she's conducting on hotspots will really help inform our work in tackling fly tipping and making sure we get it down. We need to do more on education. We need to do more on bulky waste. We need to do more in understanding people know where they can dispose of fly tipping, dispose of their waste effectively. We need to make sure we're ramping up enforcement. If you look at our enforcement numbers, you'll see we are taking good action in issuing penalty notices. But more importantly, we need to encourage more reporting from our residents. Thank you.
Councillor Mbang.
Yeah, thanks, Chairperson. My first question is on community, and there's another one on organisation as well, and a comment on organisation as well. With the communities, it's a great idea to establish an online portal for community engagement and better support our residents. I just wanted if you could comment on the group of people who whether the group of people who are residents and they are possibly not lucky enough to be literate, and also some of them who are elderly and possibly having disability as well, and they are not able to go online, how we will cover all of them. If you can comment on that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mbang, and I think a really important question, because I think it's such a topical question about digitalisation and those who may not have access to digitalisation. We have a team in the Woolwich Centre if you need support. In fact, in every consultation we do, there is an option of being able to meet someone from the council. But also we have a team where you have a lack of access to digital, you can go into the Woolwich Centre and get support, and that is offered at the Woolwich Centre. We've also recently made our website a lot more accessible. If you note, some of our forms are still paper-based. We are helping to transition those paper-based forms and make it easier, so that we're reducing costs of people sending forms in, making it much more simpler to fill out forms online. As a result of the changes to our website, we have gone up a few steps in our ranking as a council, which has done really well. You'll see how plain our website is, because actually it's about not having bright colors on there for people who have visibility issues, and making that as easy to navigate. That work was going to take some more years. I don't know, I could get the number of years it will take, but probably another year or so to make sure we get the rollover of all information Housing is the strands that has recently been done, and there's more strands, but I'm sure myself and Damon can update, and Councillor Highland can give a more detailed update on when that will be fully completed. But there's a lot of work we are doing about accessibility in the council, but also more we can be doing about accessibility in place. Thank you.
Yeah, the second part was just a comment on the workforce strategy. Having a productive and motivated workforce. I think when I had the opportunity to be a mayor, I traveled around the borough, and what I realized, and from my experience from the NHS, what I think, which I think I've mentioned this some few times to you and some other people, that we have a situation where you can motivate someone, not necessarily how much you pay the person, but just saying thank you and acknowledging the work the person has done. And what the NHS does is, in every 5 years, if you work for an organization for, let's say, 5 years, they are able to have a gathering of people who have worked up to 5 years. And then some acknowledgement certificates are given to them. This will not cost the organization any money, but it motivates and makes people, and people broadly or proudly display such things in their living rooms. So I think we should possibly implement something like that to just give that kind of, because what I realized was people work up to 40 and above before they are acknowledged in the council, which I believe that the more we make it 5 years, 10 years, 15 and 20, it will go a long way for people to always want to say, I want to get to 10 years before and when the person gets to 10 years, he's motivated to move to 15 years, and it just carries on that way. So it's just a comment on that part of it, if you have something to say. Otherwise, my question was on the last part about fairness.
Councillor Bang,
You want to? So, look, I'm really glad you asked about workforce strategy, because it is an area of huge interest of mine, how we get an effective workforce strategy to get the best workforce for the borough. And both myself and Councillor Highland have been liaising. We've just agreed a new workforce strategy, which came to GP's General Purposes Committee. And I think it's a good workforce strategy. The proof will be in making sure we have a good action plan. We're on a journey with our workforce strategy that's about really working with staff to make sure this is an organization that also delivers from them. So there's streams of work and priorities within the workforce strategy that begins to do that. Work groups, working with our staff, and really thinking about the opportunities for development, for training, for career development, career progression, and other things. We have our staff groups, thinking about how we make our staff groups more inclusive, more refreshed, more bold, that take the authority on the journey of learning. How can different staff groups help the authority and corporate organization to do better and be more inclusive? So there's a lot of work going in that. We've also had the HR refresh. We're refreshing our teams within HR, resourcing up HR so we can update our HR policies, as well as update our disciplinary processes and our recruitment processes and make it more agile. On the point about the 5 years thing, I'll be honest, I'm not a huge believer in it, because I think it's a blunt instrument. What motivates workforce isn't how many years you've spent there. What motivates them is reward and benefits. Obviously, we have our cycle to work scheme and other things like that. Actually, when people go to work for an organization, we want to think about reward. We want to think about benefits. What are our maternity policies like? What are our other policies like that they can benefit from? So the good thing of what I'm asking our HR team to do is thinking about what those incentives are for staff that make sure that they want to stay a part of this organization and work for the council, feeling proud for the council. And I think those kind of areas there are good. We've done a lot of work historically on learning and development. If you go around the local government industry, a lot of people start their careers in Greenwich. People come up to me all the time and say, oh, I remember starting in Greenwich. There's a lot of chief execs in London that have worked in Greenwich. So we should be really doing as much as we can to give people learning and development opportunities and making sure that they can grow in Greenwich and go to other areas or stay in the borough. Thank you.
Councillor Mbang, you had another question.
The last question was on, but you know, just to mention that even the word to say thank you for a hard work done today is absolutely something that people cherish, and they will come to work the next day very optimistic. You know, so these are just small things. It doesn't affect your salary or your income, but it goes a long way to motivate you.
No, you're right, Chair,
Yes.
and I'll just come on to that point because I think you raised a really important point. The staff awards, I believe, opened either this week or last week. That is our opportunity to really recognize staff. More importantly, ask the leadership is an opportunity also to thank staff and update them on what we're doing as a council. And I'll be honest with you, I got my card, my ID card, sometimes I go over to the town hall and thank staff for their work, but you are absolutely right. We need to continuously thank our staff when they do us justice.
Yeah, and the last question was on, that was also on the inclusion, equity, fairness, and zero tolerance approach, which is a great idea, but how is this implemented? When people are victimized, what are the channels they have to address when, to get the fairness that we are all looking at? Can you just comment on that? Thank you.
Can I just ask for a clarification? Is that the internal council workforce or is that communities?
That's just staff in general. Yeah.
Thank you. So our workforce strategy speaks to that. So obviously we have a strand of fairness, inclusion. It's about understanding how to have an inclusive workplace, how to raise things properly. It's about making sure that we have zero tolerance to discrimination, how people can report discrimination. Our staff surveying went out to staff and it was really revealing and it was really a good survey. What we're doing is formulating action groups to think about how we build on some of the feedback of our staff survey. And what we're doing is that staff survey is now a marker for when we have the next staff survey. So in areas of inclusivity, in areas of discrimination, we now have an action plan to think about how we further go even more. We know it's continuous work. As one person once quoted, every organization has racists, every organization has misogynists and sexism and potentially homophobic people. That is the reality of working with an organization that has people working for it. Our job is to continuously stamp it out and continuously make sure that that is not tolerated and making sure that we have a workplace that is safe and inclusive where people can highlight incidents of abuse and make sure when it's highlighted to us that we deal with it appropriately. I believe that's we offer that, but more importantly, through our staff survey, our staff has given us feedback on how we get better of it, and working through our staff groups, so our BAME staff group, our LGBTQ staff group, and other groups, we are working with those groups to make sure that we have an inclusive, fair, and honest workplace to work. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, oh, there is one more question for the leader, Councillor Hartley.
Thank you, Chair. It kind of cuts across all the themes, if that's okay. Thank you. You obviously come and see us every year, and we're always pleased to see you. And I know you're very reflective as an individual. Could I ask you, since you last came to see us, what decision that you've taken are you most pleased with, and what decision that you've taken do you most regret? And you have to answer both.
What decision am I most pleased with? I think the decision I'm most pleased with is not a front-facing decision that I can probably talk about. But look, I think decisions I'm most pleased with, it probably isn't about a decision. It's probably about the culture that has been created with the organisation, the working relationship with our Greenwich strategic leadership team is a forum, has established a forum for good, greater collaborative working, stamping out silos. Cabinet members meeting with all our directors and taking topics there, horizon scanning is a real force for good. It's about collaboration and making sure we work in to deliver things. And all kinds of decisions come through that area. If we hadn't done the peer review, if we hadn't pulsed the mirror up to ourselves, we probably wouldn't have been able to achieved that. But more importantly, what that has done has created a culture of trust. There's a lot more trust between our cabinet and our GSLTs. If you walk through the organisation, the one thing people comment on is the leader's relationship with the chief exec. We are on the same page, we work really well together, and we're delivering for this authority. A reflection on a decision that I probably made that I think I would regret the way it was done is probably one of the school's decisions when one signed off a report. That was quite a tough decision because there was a lot of pressure on head teachers, school of governors, and I think we didn't have a well-placed comms plan at the time, and it brought a lot of uncertainty, and I think it could have been done better. And moving forward, I think the process is where we have decisions that arise from schools, where heads are facing pressures, school governors are facing pressures, staff are facing pressures, and children are facing pressures on the uncertainty of their school, we have to think about how we communicate through that a lot more. And that was a harder decision because it came at a very difficult time. I think we were either in Purda, it was an election time, we were receiving calls from different people or school leaders. And my reflection is I wish I waited a little bit more and actually spent more time thinking about how the communications needed to be handled. Subsequently from there, one of the things we've done is meet with Church of England because we need to make sure Church of England schools are communicating with us and doing things in the right way with our timelines. It's hard to make the judgment on schools sometimes because I think the challenge is that you want children to be in a school that helps their learning and development. And in delaying a decision, you might have a detrimental impact. And I think in thinking about inclusion and making sure that we don't disrupt children's education, sometimes quick decisions need to be made. And that's the right thing to do, but you must back it up with comms because it does bring a lot of uncertainty. And actually in the pandemic, we saw when schools closed, we saw the tension and concern that was placed on parents, and we need to do better on that. Thank you.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of this item. Thank you very much. Yeah. Councillor Okereke is going to stay with us for the next item, and if I can invite Damon to come up. Thank you. Great, so we are moving on to item 6, which is the 2024 to 25 savings tracker. Damon, is there anything you'd like to say to introduce the item?
Thanks, Chair. I'll just give a very brief sort of resume, which is contained within sort of sections 3 and 4 of the report. And obviously, just to sort of recap the reason why we're here, and basically this was something that was considered by Overview and Scrutiny sort of last year, and basically the idea was to bring sort of future reports in order to sort of provide some overview around the savings process. The report itself, so basically the budget for sort of previous year was set in March 2024, and at the start of the year 33.7 million of new savings were agreed sort of going forward. Basically, the outturn for the previous financial year was considered by Cabinet yesterday, and as part of that report, the progress for those particular savings was noted within that report. Of the 33.7 million, it's worth bearing in mind that we actually over-programmed our savings. So conscious that it was a significant sort of target to achieve, sort of mobilising and ensuring that we get sort of delivery of that was always going to be a quite a challenging task. So there was an over-programming of 3.3 million built into it. At the end of the year, we have some slippage, which is in the region of about £10 million. But bearing in mind we've got over-programming, as I said, of 3.3 million, the net position, the net effect in terms of any under delivery last year was therefore in the region of about 7 million. The important thing to note, as set out in Table 1, is that the vast majority, virtually all of that slippage, is around timing or logistics in terms of that delivery. There's one other thing that I'd probably note. I mean, it can be found actually in the appendix itself, but it's worth noting that one of these savings actually overachieved. Thanks.
Thank you. I'd just like to start by sort of looking at the report itself and thinking about when you came here last time with the savings tracker. I've noticed that there has been some improvements to the report in that there's a couple of sentences now explaining what each item is. But it seems to me when I've been looking through the table that the definitions of timing, delivery, and not possible still don't seem to be working. I'm not going to take you through every single example because it would be very boring. But when I've gone through, there seems to be quite a lot that it says is a timing issue, that seems to be a delivery issue, or that might not happen at all. There's quite a few in that bucket, which just makes it quite difficult when someone's looking at the high-level view, you know, that lovely bar graph. So I do think that needs to be looked at again. I don't know if anyone else felt that when they were looking through. And then the second point from our last recommendations as well was detail on the impact of pre-election periods, which I'm not sure we've heard back from. So if you could speak to that, I think that would be really helpful.
Okay, I mean, on the first point, we'll take it away and we'll do a line-by-line analysis just to ensure that the coding is absolutely correct. Would it be possible for the chair to sort of just remind the room on what the second point was?
Sorry, yes, this is at 3.3 on the report. So that officers provide more detail on the impact of pre-election periods on savings delivery and assessing current interpretations of these periods.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think in terms of this particular report, we don't necessarily have that sort of level of detail that's sitting in there. I think the thing that I can talk to in terms of some of the issues that have been raised, through the impacts of those is that whilst there were sort of delays, around delivery of some of those savings due to those events taking place, the report actually sort of indicates that, on some of those larger items, they are actually now in delivery for 25-26. So I think it's our apology that we haven't got the actual detail that was requested there, and I'll have to give the undertaking that is supplied and circulated. The undertaking will be that it will be done before the next meeting.
Great, thank you. Councillor Hartley.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, I just wanted to say how grateful I am for the response to the suggestions we made about improving the report. This is much more easy for us to get our heads around. I've got lots of questions on specifics, which you'll be relieved to know I'm not going to ask you. I'll pick up with the relevant sort of cabinet members. So my question is more about process and the management of the MTFS. And the Chair's sort of touched on one of them. The first is about realistic sort of target setting, and what you've learned, what the council has learned in the process of doing this massive exercise for 24-25 about how to set targets. And we've touched on this at ARM. I think what this says to me is, there's a bucket of sort of not possible savings or delivery issues that are actually quite straightforward. Something's not legally possible, or actually it's a statutory service and we need to deliver it. And it feels to me that those could have been caught quite early. So have we learned anything about that? And secondly, on the timing issue sort of bucket, what changes are you making to really realistically assess how long a saving is going to take to achieve in future MTFS sort of cycles?
So on that first one, I suppose if we look at the not possible column, and going back to the Chair's original point about the coding that we have for them, we look at the one that's in communities, environment and central 0.3, for example. Now, the issue there is that it was it was pending a Secretary of State decision. That decision wasn't taken at the relevant time, and therefore that was not possible for that particular financial year. However, a decision has subsequently been taken, so that there's a question about where you actually want to place that item. It was technically not possible in the year. It wouldn't have been lawful. However, it is now possible for 25-26, and will be reported in the usual way, and will either be sort of fully achieved or will potentially move into one of those sort of timing or delivery sort of buckets. So what that really leaves us with is an extremely small sum in terms of the whole package of savings. 118 lines worth of savings proposals at 33.7 million. There's always going to be something, I think, will be my sort of very generalistic answer here. There will always be something. 0.4 out of 33.7 is that, definitely that's in that bucket. In terms of your second sort of question, in terms of, assessing what have we learnt, how long does it actually take to get delivery? I think one of the things we've learnt, which certainly helps going forward, coming up with proposals is a very inclusive, it needs to be an inclusive exercise. And we've certainly, I think, if I go back to the previous item where the leader was talking about the introduction of the Greenwich Strategic Leadership Team, and some of the some of the conversations that we've had in there, and it's about ensuring that we have a very joined up process from day one of generating what these proposals are. So cabinet members, departmental management teams, directors, etc., all having sort of conversations right at the very outset to ensure that when we sort of embark on this journey of discovery of, we've got an idea for a proposal here, is it actually going to run? That we're starting off from the same point, we are as joined up as we can be, and we've got enough sort of backing behind it, again, both senior officer and senior politician as well. So that's obviously a very important sort of aspect. The other thing is something that goes on in the background, and I know the panel, again, on the previous item talked about sort of the directorates and talked about resources, but also legal and democratic services. There are representatives from all of those enabling services that actually, once you've actually got a proposal, will actually bring it into a room. So you've got all of your representatives, whether that's legal, finance, HR, digital, and so on, procurement, are all in there giving the assessment. Is it lawful? We have a change and improvement team in there, also giving some assessments about its potential. Can the organisation, actually sort of deliver this? Has the organisation got the resources behind it to mobilise and ensure it gets over the line? So we've been refining those processes over the last couple of years, and that's now becoming a bit more of a fine-tuned sort of exercise. So I think that's roughly the process we've been learning.
Okay. Could I just ask a very specific question then? You get all the right people in the room together to come up with a proposal, interrogate it. You've taught me through that before. Are you doing the same at the end of the process for every saving? So give you an example. The review of the council's library and leisure offer, £780,000 not delivered, delay due to VAT changes, ongoing negotiations and complexities in amending the contract. To take that as an example, do you sit down with everybody involved in that and say, right, what did we learn about why it took longer, why the negotiations were more protracted, and what could we apply next time to other examples to set a more realistic target? Like an after-action review for each one of those 118.
Yeah, no, I think with some of these, and again, it depends on which one it is, but for example, you know, you've mentioned one of those that includes complex negotiations. It does, and that was always known at the outset. When we run through this, we have effectively, they're all risk graded. So we make a risk assessment across each one of those, and so that we're cognizant of where the issues could potentially be. So we know going into this that there are you know, this is not straightforward, and there will be a lot of work done. Not all of it is within our control, but hence that's why we build in things like over programming, because we know we're not going to get it all delivered.
So I've got one final question on PERDA, but what I'm really looking for, I want to hear that the council is learning and getting better at this in each cycle. So I just invite you to comment on that. But my final question was about PERDA, which the chair touched on. So this is something the committee raised before. You know, on PERDA, the Children's Centre's reduction and efficiencies item, £2 million. And as it says, there were so many by-elections. My word, were there so many by-elections in this period. Who knows, there might be more. And every time there is a by-election, things seem to grind to a halt. And I really would urge the council to look at its interpretation of PERDA, because I do not think it was necessary to not deliver at least some of those savings on children's centres. And there's legal advice, and I appreciate all that, but I feels like we're very, very over-interpretive of PERDA rules. So we did ask for a comment on that back, and I'd really welcome, not necessarily now, just a proper look at whether we're making it harder for us to deliver savings because of PERDA periods, because there'll always be more PERDA periods on the way.
Okay, I'll start with the pre-election period to begin with, and I think I'll go back to the comment just now, which is we'll you know, provide a more detailed response, and that'll be circulated to the panel in advance of the next meeting. On the other question, which was about sort of learning process, so whilst we have the strategic leadership team, which is obviously the cabinet and the Greenwich management team in the room together, you know, undertaking some of that review, a key part of it is a survey that we do. So we undertake to basically review with the officer side and basically say, look, how was the whole process? Not just about the savings. How was the MTFS process start to finish? Number of questions in there in terms of how they felt it went. Was it positive? Has it improved since last year? For example, and similarly around the cabinet as well, just to see where they are as well. We then bring them together and we'll report that back into that room, so that we can really get a good understanding of whether, you know, we have got a decent process here. How can we improve? We encourage people to, you know, say where we think we should have done a bit better. And like I said, you know, this has got better each year. I can definitely sit here and say over the last 3 years, absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Fahy.
Chair, we could sit here this evening and have a very abstract discussion about our philosophical views and the way in which we deal with our budgets. And I think, quite frankly, Councillor Hartley, you've got a bit of a nerve, really, because effectively, what has happened over the last few years is that every decision taken by the council in terms of budgets has had an impact on the community we serve. And in effect, some of the decisions that the officers have taken in respect of the budget are, in my view, appropriate decisions. The £2 million on children's services, in effect, good to pause that, because effectively, hopefully the government will come along in terms of its decisions around Sure Start, Mark II, and begin to invest in the situation. So the point I want, sorry?
Councillor Fahy, is there a question on the report, please?
There is. The point I wanted to make is that, in essence, it is very clear that many of these decisions can't be dealt with, because effectively many of those decisions will impact on the community we serve. And so therefore it seems to me that we need to hold fire, because I think we will have an opportunity to deal with some of those issues in the longer term. Because we're talking about cuts, we're not talking about savings. Every decision we take is going to impact on our community, and that's not our role as we sit around this table this evening. Councillor Fletcher and myself sat here last night in a joint discussion about young people. I suggest that every member of the committee read the report. Frightening in terms of the way we are neglecting our young people. And we've got to find ways to deal with that.
Councillor Fahy, do you have a question for Damon or for Councillor Okereke on the report? On the report. Thank you.
It's a question, really. I read yesterday that the Secretary of State has sent a note to every local authority leader with regard to fairer funding. Have you responded to that letter?
This is the letter from the Secretary of State on the Fairer Funding 2.0. Is that the question, yeah? No, we have not responded yet. At the moment, the government just released the Fairer Funding Review 2.0, and we have till the 15th of August to respond. We'll be compiling a response and circulating and submitting to the government through an official response. It's just come out, so no, I haven't responded yet. Thank you.
Apologies, Chair. I mean, Councillor Fahy said I had a nerve to be asking entirely legitimate questions of an officer in a non-party political way. And I think, and he said it's not our role. This is exactly our role, to ask legitimate questions about the delivery of savings, which are absolutely crucial to the MTFS. So could I seek your advice, Chair, in how a member, when he's faced with that kind of accusation from a colleague on the committee, should respond?
Let's move on. We'll pick it up afterwards. But I appreciate your point. Thank you. This isn't a political discussion. We're discussing the MTFS savings report. Councillor Richards-Cotell.
Thank you very much for your report, Damon, and all the work you and your team have been doing. If you could reflect on some of the sort of macroeconomic headwinds we've got going on at the moment and how that is affecting local councils, and are there any that you've got your eye on, particularly as sort of opportunities or kind of challenges kind of going forward at the moment?
Okay, so other than anything that's already just been mentioned, I'll move on to the other sort of macroeconomics, as you say. Yeah, there's there are the usual suspects around. You can take the question. Yes, there are the usual suspects around, but around sort of inflation and interest rates. But the thing that's really sort of been a bit sort of bumpy of late has been, you know, what's been going on in the world generally, and that has, you know, if we reflect back over the last few years where we've had COVID, Ukraine, you know, etc. We've now got tariffs, and who knows what else next. Now, you know, those sorts of things that are going on, they're coming thick and fast, and they are having effects not just in the country in which these places are, you know, they're being announced. You know, they're all over the place. So, you know, for example, on the tariffs, if part of that is about encouraging investment maybe into the US, then the downside to, or the counter to that is, well, where was that investment before? So if that means, you know, a car plant, you know, is no longer in the UK because the encouragement is now to, you know, put it in, you know, sort of America, then that's potentially got an effect as well. So all of these things happening, you know, and the world isn't exactly the most friendliest of places at the moment. So there are, potential for more global shocks. So I think my answer is yes, we have the usual suspects out there in terms of interest rates and inflation, but they are being buffeted by some of these announcements, and we just really need to keep an eye on that. Obviously, we don't want interest rates going up too much because that will impact on our ability to sort of borrow to finance investment into the borough. And again, inflation as well, means effectively the cost of providing services to our community goes up as well. So we just keep a constant eye.
Any other questions? No? All right, well, thank you both very much. What I would say, Damon, is, and Councillor Okereke, when we next have this item, I think it would be good to bring in some more cabinet members whose items are particularly affected so that we can ask questions on the substance as well. But thank you very much for the report. The final item is the forward plan to note the upcoming executive decisions and to determine any items for scrutiny. Is there any items in the forward plan that members would like to consider? No? Then the meeting is closed. Thank you.